We're currently unpacking John's challenge to show that we've repented and turned to God by the way that we live, and taking some time to understand what does it really mean to be saved, and is it possible that we could say that once saved is always saved. We've looked a little bit in depth at this idea of being born again, but actually it's a pushing a new start for our life, that we get a new nature, we get a new identity, and we start a new life. We're no longer the same person, and consequently there should be evidence to show that we're no longer the same person. And as we unpack this nature of salvation, we realise that actually this sense of the evidence for our life becomes a question. And I want us to understand that it's not a question of earning our salvation, but because we're saved, there is evidence to show that that's been a change in our life. In Ephesians, Paul writes in chapter 2 that it is by grace you have been saved, by faith, and this is not by works, lest anyone should boast. So the Bible's quite clear that we're saved not by works, but by the work of Jesus, and we receive a gift of salvation when we're born again, when we decide to surrender our life to God, when we confess with our mouth and believe in our heart that Jesus is who he says he is. And so being saved is not about doing something in order to be saved. It's actually what we do, the actions we have, are a response to our overwhelming experience and gratitude and new life that we have. And I think one of the best ways to think about this is from one of my favourite examples, one of my favourite stories, which is Les Miserables. And in Les Miserables, you have this criminal who is given a second chance, and he's full of bitterness and anger and rage at the injustice of being sent to the prison hulks for stealing a loaf of bread. And nobody wants to give him that chance, except for a bishop. And he's staying the night at a bishop's house, but he's so angry, and so much of the old him is there with the resentment, that he steals the bishop's silver. And the police catch him and they bring him back to the bishop, and they're ready to throw him away, throw the key away for the rest of his life. And the bishop has a choice. The bishop can say, you've caught him, take him back to prison, give him what he deserves, I've got my silver back. And that would be justice. And he's got every right to do that. Valjean has been caught red-handed, he's nowhere to go, and justice demands that he should pay the price. But the bishop has a second choice, and that second choice is to say, I've got my silver back, let him go. And that would be mercy, where he's not getting what he deserves. But the bishop does a third thing, and he says, no, actually, it's all right. He did this with my permission, and he's allowed to be set free. And the bishop chooses to show Valjean grace. And he says to Valjean very famously, Valjean, you forgot the candlesticks. And the police let him go, and Valjean's standing there holding these candlesticks in his hand. And the bishop says, you've been given a new chance. Use these to change your life. And throughout the rest of the story, we see these candlesticks going with Valjean as a constant reminder to him that he's been given something he doesn't deserve. And because he's been given something he doesn't deserve, he spends the rest of his life allowing that to transform him, where he goes on to become this picture of transformation. If we're truly saved, it will show by what we do. When you love someone, it shows. You want to be with that person, you want to spend that time with that person, you talk about that person, you're proud of that person. You know, when you've experienced something that is life-changing, you can't keep it to yourself. I mean, imagine if you discovered the secret to curing cancer, you wouldn't keep it to yourself. You would share that for the benefit of humanity. And so when you've saved something which is totally transformational, it's not something that you can keep to yourself. Salvation changes our eternal destiny. And it gives us an eternal security. And what we mean by that is we now have the assurance that our sins have been forgiven and we will spend eternity with God. We have a hope in that future. We discover a new freedom and a new joy. In other words, when Jesus said we get to live life to the full and life in abundance, that's what salvation does. It gives us the opportunity to live life to the full. And so salvation should motivate us to live differently, that other people would see what we have and want what we have. So just as salvation gives us a new identity, a new nature and a new life, it also gives us a new purpose. It gives us the opportunity to rescue people we care about. Does salvation mean so much to you that you want to share it with the people that you care about?